everybody. It is Scientology Outside of the Church podcast, season 5, episode 16. I'm your co-host, Jonathan Burke, here with Jason Roba. We're going to take some more time and we're going to go over the Dianetics axioms. These are, there's quite a few of them. There's over 200. And we've had a lot of positive input on the last show where we went over the Scientology axioms. So we're going to spend some time talking about these, and it's not something that would ever happen in the church. Back in the day, in the 60s or 70s, people would sit outside and smoke a cigarette outside the org and talk about the axioms and logics and things like that, and it was okay. Right. And I was thinking the other night, I just thought, a lot of people don't really understand these, and there's no reason that you can't sit and talk about something in a book.
Yeah,
this whole verbal data thing and all this stuff, and it's cutting people's reach. We're not going to do that, damn it. We're gonna aid people's reach and help them understand these things by discussing them. And I'm going to put a link to the axioms, the Dianetic axioms, in the podcast description, where you can go download it from our Qual library on Docdroid, and you can follow along. That's my best advice. So without more ado, we're going to round robin these. I'm going to do axiom 1. He's going to do axiom 2, and we'll discuss, but we're going to probably only be able to get in about 50 or so here in this hour of the podcast, but we'll break it up into 4 podcasts. So here we go. These are from the original thesis from 1948 for Dianetics. Axiom 1 is survive. That one's pretty obvious. Is the goal of theta, and we'll get into the axioms a little later on as far as what this is comprised of. But the main thing is axiom 1, survive in the physical universe and the theta universe.
Yeah. And we got axiom 2. The purpose of the mind is to solve problems relating to survival. So this is, when we're talking about Dianetic axioms, this would be the analytical mind. The thetan is there to solve problems relating to survival.
Mm-hmm. Right. And thetan's got to have a game. So axiom 3, the mind directs the organism, the species, its symbiotes or life in the effort of survival. What does that mean? The mind directs the organism, the species, its symbiotes or life in the effort of survival. So you're using the mind to get the body and the species and your progeny, kids and things like that, and maybe even your chickens that have chickens in your barn, in an effort of survival. So you're trying to get everything to survive. Seems like a worthwhile cause.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Dynamics, group, work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is before there was such a thing as dynamics. So axiom 4, your turn.
Okay. Axiom 4, the mind, as the central direction system of the body, poses, perceives, and resolves problems of survival and directs or fails to direct their execution. So again, we've got the mind, it's the commander, the one in charge, and this one, resolves the problems of survival. And it either direct or fail to direct.
Mm-hmm. And as for our listeners, we got to let them know, keep in mind, this is from 1948. Mm-hmm. This is what started it all. And this we will expand upon as we get into the rest of the Dianetic axioms. These are just the original ones, the founding axioms. So the mind, as a central direction system of the body, poses, perceives, and resolves problems of survival and directs or fails to direct their execution. So you've got thetan, mind, body. So you got the thetan, the spirit, pushing the mind to decide based off of comparables that it's saying fire is hot, ice is cold. Okay, so what do I do? Okay, I need to do this. That's what he's talking about here in axiom 4. Axiom 5, I'll read this one. The persistency of the individual in life is directly governed by the strength of his basic dynamic. And I've been covering this with pre-clears a lot in the last 2 weeks, as we go over these before we start auditing every one of them. And it helps them understand what auditing is about and what we're looking for. And they have a lot of wins with them. So when he says of his basic dynamic in axiom 5, we're talking about the dynamic of the thrust to survive here. We're not talking about the first dynamic, the second dynamic. We'll get to that here in a little bit. It's his dynamic. Everybody has a different dynamic. Some people survive better than others just naturally. I mean, you've seen that, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right.
Scientology or no Scientology.
Mm-hmm. Some people are just endowed with more, I guess you could say basic dynamic thrust towards survival.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. Axiom 6.
Axiom 6. Yep. Intelligence is the ability of an individual, group, or race to resolve problems relating to survival. So yeah, the intelligence, you've got again, is something, one is either endowed with or can gain more intelligence throughout life, which helps you resolve problems or helps the group or race resolve problems relating to the survival of that race or group.
That's right. Okay, so that's it for the first founding 6 axioms, Dianetics axioms, in original thesis in 1948.
And these can all be found in what book is it, Jonathan? These are in 0 to 8?
These are in the Book of Basic Scientology 0 to 8, and they're also in a couple of other books as well.
Yeah, this is one that I definitely want to have. You said it's on Doctoroid or Mediafire. What is it that you've got it on?
Yeah, we've got it on Doctoroid, where it'll be in the description of the podcast, and they can download it as a PDF and follow along.
Yeah, I myself am definitely going to put this one on my phone there for reference, just so I have it. I've got an iPhone, and I like being able to put icons on my screen with different documents. And this book is definitely one I want to have as a document on my phone linked to.
Mm-hmm. So, like I said, we're going to get to what the dynamics are of survival. So here they are. This is the fundamental axioms of Dianetics. Like we said, the Dianetic principle of existence is survive. Survival, considered as the single and sole purpose, subdivides into 4 dynamics. Now, at this time in 1948, he came up with 4 dynamics. We now have 8 dynamics. Now, what the dynamic 1 is the urge of the individual towards survival for the individual and his symbiotes. By symbiote is meant all entities and energies which aid survival. So that's you and your body. That's the first dynamic. You want to do dynamic 2?
Yep. Dynamic 2 is the urge of the individual toward survival through procreation. It includes both the sex act and the raising of progeny, the care of children and their symbiotes. So again, this is survival with yourself and family, the children, rearing of children, their care, upbringing, and making sure that they're okay and making more of them.
Mm-hmm. And ma and pa as well.
Yep.
Okay. Dynamic 3 is the urge of the individual towards survival for the group or the group for the group, and includes the symbiotes of that group. So you could say that could be you and your book club friends and their kids and all of that stuff, or you and your local Scientology AOGP, or it could be dynamic 3. That's the third dynamic. Dynamic 4.
Dynamic 4 is the urge of the individual towards survival for mankind, or the urge towards survival of mankind for mankind, as well as the group for mankind, etc., and includes the symbiotes of mankind. So this is talking about, humans, humankind, people here on planet Earth, individual survival
as a whole.
Yeah, right. Individuals, families, and groups for the sake of mankind.
That's right. And he goes on to say the absolute goal. Pause. I need to take the meat out.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Okay, so the absolute goal of survival is immortality or infinite survival. This is sought by the individual in terms of itself as an organism or as a spirit, or as a name, or as his children, as a group of which he or she is a member, or as mankind and the progeny and symbiotes of others as well as his own. So you're moving forward throughout all your dynamics, in short. And you have to have these dynamics. What is your fourth dynamic? Give your first dynamic. What is your first dynamic? Give your fourth dynamic. This is, it's exchanged by dynamics. They all have to be in. You can't just live on the first dynamic. That's what he's saying here. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, that's right. That we get into that other Dianetic concept of the only one. Once one is only living and surviving for the fourth dynamic, or excuse me, one's only surviving for the first dynamic.
Right.
No.
So then he goes on to say, the reward of survival activity is pleasure. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to, survival is to the degree that you're happy. And this isn't in here, but I mean, it is also to the degree that you're happy is to the degree that your ethics are in. That's really survival.
Yeah.
Is having your ethics in it needs to be mentioned.
Right. Yeah. And I would say just my own, like you were talking about the people outside smoking cigarettes and talking about this stuff. We're sitting here drinking coffee and talking about this, but I would say that for me, that survival, that pleasure that I get from survival on my dynamics is the greatest happiness that I can achieve. It's greater than we did the dopamine podcast. It's greater than any other dopamine flood things with regard to that, this reward for survival being pleasure, that gives me, being able to be, an auditor, being able to be a full-time auditor, a composer, all those things, that gives, my survival on those dynamics gives me pleasure. My first dynamic, I don't have a second dynamic right now. I got my folks, but it's like, the third dynamic, it's really wonderful. And I get a lot out of that. That's
right.
That happiness, having my ethics in there. And once I'm not happy there, where are my ethics out in those areas? Get things
That's
going.
right.
Yep.
You got it. Successes raise the survival potential towards infinite survival. Failures lower the potential toward death. You learn from your mistakes, but they can also be the end of you if you're not careful. So you need to, we don't learn from our successes, we learn from our failures.
Yeah.
Even though failures, he says your failures lower the survival potential towards death. But we have the tech for that in independent Scientology. You were going to say?
Fourth dynamic, the failures of the failures of the individual first, second, and third dynamics really do also aid the survival of the fourth dynamic. Mankind,
right,
learns from its mistakes.
That's right. Well, that's a scientific method. What did we do wrong? How do we fix it?
Yep.
The human mind is engaged upon perceiving and retaining data, composing or computing conclusions, and posing and resolving problems related to organisms along all four dynamics, now 8 dynamics. And the purpose of perception, retention, concluding, and resolving problems is to direct its own organism and symbiotes and other organisms and symbiotes along the 4 dynamics towards survival. So again, what is your first dynamic? Give your fourth dynamic. What is your fourth dynamic? Give your first. What's your third? Give your first. Your first, your third, so on and so forth. So, you got these, the rings in the tree sort of thing is, everything has to help everything else. You can't just live on one dynamic. They all have to be in. Mm-hmm. You want to go ahead and continue from intelligence for a little while? Let me know, and I'll take over when you want to switch.
Sounds good. Intelligence is the ability to perceive, pose, and resolve problems. The dynamic is the tenacity to life and vigor and the persistence in survival. Both the dynamic and intelligence are necessary to persist and accomplish, and neither is a constant quantity from individual to individual, group to group. So again, this is like what we were talking about earlier with, there is a certain endowment of these from individual to individual. And, you can obtain, I would say, you can training, study, environment, all of that can increase your intelligence. And there's also things out there that can decrease your intelligence and the ability to perceive. There's plenty of activities out there that can increase and decrease intelligence and the dynamic tenacity toward life as well. So going on here, the dynamics are inhibited by engrams, which lie across them and disperse life force. So, an engram being a facsimile of a moment of pain and unconsciousness, a painful impact upon the individual on that, reduces awareness and is held in place by pain and unconsciousness. So those disperse the life force and the tendency toward survival on that dynamic.
That's right.
Yep. So intelligence. Go ahead. You're about to say something?
No. It's okay. Go ahead.
Intelligence is inhibited by engrams, which feed false or improperly graded data into the analyzer. So these engrams, are taking things that are no longer in present time and bringing them into the analyzer. So the analyzer is looking at that engramic content in PT in present time, and therefore it is false or improperly graded data to the analyzer because it's pictures out of that engram, content out of that engram.
Yeah. Right. Continue.
All right. Happiness is the overcoming of not unknown obstacles toward a known goal and transiently, the contemplation of or indulgence in pleasure. Okay, so I gave myself an MU there. Is that transiently? So we're going to do some real life word clearing here for everybody while we're on this podcast, because I want a word that I do not understand fully.
Yeah, let's look it up.
Okay, so we're going to look up the word transiently here. And then, Jonathan, you've got an old dictionary there from this era, right?
Yeah.
And which dictionary is it?
Yeah, I've got the original shorter Oxford English dictionaries, the 1950 edition. So this is like when it occurred, and that's why I got it. It's for this very reason, because you need to speak the language that and have the definitions for the language that was being spoken at that time, not 70 years later.
Right.
So we bounded, and it's passing out or operating beyond itself, passing through.
Okay.
Passing or flowing through. So that's the definition that applies there. We will clear the rest of these definitions after the podcast, so we don't eat up our podcast time in doing this. Give me a sentence using transiently in that sense.
Let's see. So, his goal of becoming a composer was transiently influenced. No, fuck. This is, oh man.
Welcome to the wonderful world of word clearing.
Right. Yeah. This doing it on the podcast puts.
Well, people need to get some reality on this. So you know how it works, because a lot of people haven't been in a course room.
Right.
So let's
this
again, the definition. Yeah, the definition is passing or flowing through, passing from one thing or person to another.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So transiently, the definition in my own words means it's something that is flowing through from either one place to another, or flowing from one person to another, from one terminal to another.
Right. So it's sort of changing state, but with the same purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's passing of, flowing through, passing from one thing or person to another. And in this sense here, it says, where is it? Happiness is the overcoming of not unknown obstacles towards a known goal, and transiently the contemplation of or indulgence and pleasure. So happiness is overcoming unknown obstacles and a known goal, and transiently is in so doing, it's that what it comes down to is that it's not the destination, it's the journey.
Okay. Right. Going through, flowing through.
Yeah. So give me a sentence in that wise.
Okay. So the, upon embarking on his journey of becoming a composer, his education, internship, and on-the-job training transiently affected his ability to be a better composer.
Right. Very good. Give me another one.
All right. So the ice cube went transiently from the state of being solid to liquid.
Good. How about another one?
The journey on the train from Seattle to Los Angeles was a transient. No, let's see. No, that's a little dinky. I'm going to restart that sentence again and use this properly.
Okay.
Train travel could be described. No, let's see. I'm trying to use transiently properly, because we're talking about, again, the journey, not the destination through this. So going through from one point to another. So that the train trip transiently took him from Seattle to Los Angeles, and viewing all the space, or all the geography in between Seattle and Los Angeles.
Okay, good. You think you got it?
No, I'm not solid on this one. So in real,
okay, let's do some more sentences.
Yeah. So transiently. So this is again going from one place to another, from one person to another. Okay, so yep. He progressed transiently from living in hotels to living in his own apartment.
There you go. Give me one more.
And then she transiently went from being a intern to being a resident in the hospital.
Good. How's that feel now?
Well, better now. So I would imagine this one comes from transient. The etymology of this one, obviously, so someone or something being temporary, or like they use it as another idiom for someone who's a homeless person, someone who's not
right
out someplace. So
yep. And in here and like I said, we're not going to clear all the definitions on the podcast because it'll take too long. We'll do that afterwards, but we will get the derivation. So the derivation on my end from Oxford is Latin transiens, transiere, French trans, across, and ire, to go. So that's where it came from. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead and read the sentence for me again.
Okay. Happiness is the overcoming of not unknown obstacles toward a known goal, and transiently the contemplation of or indulgence in pleasure. So through that, the contemplation of indulgence in pleasure. Now I get it. See, I don't know. True MU.
Yeah. Yeah. So there you go. All right. So I'll take a couple of paragraphs here. The analytical mind is that portion of the mind which perceives and retains experience data to compose and resolve problems and direct the organism along with four dynamics. It thinks in differences and similarities. Now I'm going to drop a bomb on people here. If you've read Dianetics before, you're always like analytical mind, reactive mind. And then you don't hear about analytical mind much after that. Well, the reason for that is LRH says in 1961, probably September, October, on the St. Hill Special Briefing Course, he says sort of blithely while he's lighting a cigarette, the analytical mind is the thetan, the spirit. That's what the analytical mind is. He said we just didn't have a concept for it, a word for it. So this is saying that the thetan, the analytical mind, is that portion of the mind which perceives and retains experience data to compose and resolve problems and direct the organism along the four dynamics. It thinks in differences and similarities. Now, this is interesting here, and I want to bring this up, and I do this with my pre-clears and students as well. Data series 1, it's going to come up here just a second. You'll see it because we're sharing a screen here. This is from 26 April 1970. This is data series 1, the anatomy of thought. Now, what LRH is saying in the Dianetics axioms here is he's saying, binary lossable space. But intelligence, ability to perceive human mind decay. There we go. All right. Intelligence is the ability to perceive, pose, and resolve problems. The dynamic is the tenacity of life and vigor, persistence, and survival. Gosh, what happened? It just disappeared. Do I have a misunderstood word? Is it?
No, it's
oh, there it is. Happiness. There we go. Okay. He says in this paragraph, the analytical mind is that portion of the mind which perceives and retains experience data to compose and resolve problems and direct the organism along the four dynamics. It thinks in differences and similarities. Now, in 1971, in Data Series 1, the anatomy of thought, what he says that expands upon this, sanity is the ability to recognize differences, similarities, and identity. Sanity is the ability to recognize differences and similarities and identities. Whereas in 1950, he said it thinks in differences and similarities. It's not that different.
Right.
So your ability to differentiate one thing from another instead of the reactive mind being A equals A equals A, pepper equals hot cocoa equals a red rooster. They're all the same. Then you're thinking in similarities.
Right.
A equals A equals A. You're trying to differentiate. A rooster isn't like chocolate. Chocolate isn't like pepper.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's what a being does is they have a database and they compare these things. And it's either a reactive database or it's an analytical database. The reactive database, they don't have control of. That's the reactive mind. More on that later. The reactive mind is that portion of the mind which files and retains physical pain and painful emotions and seeks to direct the organism solely on a stimulus-response basis. It thinks only in identities. That's because it only identifies certain things and then it gets confused and everything is everything else. This is why engrams, it's not why engrams persist, but it's what makes up engrams.
Cool.
So the somatic mind is that mind which, directed by the analytical or reactive mind, places solutions into effect on the physical level. Let me read that again. The somatic mind is that mind which, directed by the analytical or reactive mind, places solutions into effect on the physical level. So what you're doing is a thetan, or a spirit, is thetan, mind, body again. You're taking the thetan is taking the mind, and through the mind, the database is posing solutions via the meat puppet and the physical universe to put order into the physical universe or change it in some way. Just think about it. You're putting order or changing it all the time in the physical universe as a being in a body. So this brings us to, you can go ahead and do this one if you want, starting with the training pattern.
A training pattern is that stimulus response mechanism resolved by the analytical mind to care for routine activity or emergency activity. It is held in the somatic mind and can be changed at will by the analytical mind. Habit is that stimulus-response reaction dictated by the reactive mind from the content of engrams and put into effect by the somatic mind. It can be changed only by those things which change engrams. All right. Yeah, so with that, we're talking about a training pattern, something that is a stimulus response mechanism. And
right.
It used, for routine activity, doing things that we do, what we would kind of say on automatic, what we do, without putting too much thought into it, or knee-jerk reactions within emergency activity. And then we're talking habit here, stimulus response reaction dictated by the reactive mind from the content of engrams and put into effect by the somatic mind. So, things like that we do out of habit, we were talking about people smoking cigarettes earlier, the habit of just pulling, I don't smoke cigarettes. I don't know what the actions is that people do it specifically, but pulling the smokes out of the pocket, getting one, putting it in the mouth and lighting it, there's the habit of that, the K-cup of coffee to the coffee maker and bringing the coffee downstairs for podcast.
Right. Continue.
All right. Aberrations under which is included all deranged or irrational behavior are caused by engrams. They are stimulus response, pro and contra survival. Psychosomatic ills are caused by engrams. The engram is the single source of aberrations and psychosomatic ills. Moments of unconsciousness, when the analytical mind is attenuated in greater or lesser degree, are the only moments when engrams can be received. The only moment when engrams can be received. So, yeah, there it is. Moments of unconsciousness. When the analytical mind is attenuated, either a little bit or a lot, that's the only moment when a engram can be received.
Right. And, when you're tired, you're hungry, you're stressed, that type of thing, the clowns in the car are doing the recording instead of you.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Okay. The engram is a moment of unconsciousness containing physical pain or painful emotion in all perceptions and is not available to the analytical mind as experience. Emotion is three things: engramic response to situations, endocrine metering of the body to meet situations on an analytical level, and the inhibition of or the furtherance of life force. So it was the reactive mind was designed as a good thing to help you get out of tight spots, and then turned bad because it was an obsessive and compulsive recording mechanism. Now, there's a lot more to that, but to put a finer point on it, societies earlier in time, prior to us being on this planet, had a problem, and that problem was it's too much life in this universe. We talked about this. I think we touched on this a couple times in a couple different podcasts. But the reactive mind was developed in order to keep people out of other people's business and to get them to play some other game and get them to dwindle down to where they were no longer a problem, counter-creating other people. And that's how it went wrong. So he says here, the potential value of an individual or a group may be expressed by the equation P to a particular power times V equals ID, where I is intelligence and D is dynamic. So potential value at some particular exponent could be 1, it could be 1,000, depending on the person. The worth of an individual is computed in terms of the alignment on any dynamic. So if you're aligned on all your dynamics, you're in pretty good shape. Dynamics 1 through 8 of their potential value with optimum survival along that dynamic or dynamics. A high potential value may, by reversed vector, result in a negative worth, as in some severely aberrated persons. A high potential value on any dynamic assures a high worth only in the unaberrated person. So you could have a lot of potential value and be aberrated, and still, that's why you see a lot of wealthy people, but yet they do really aberrated things. Mm-hmm. That's basically what that's saying right there. And that's from Dianetics, Modern Science, and Mental Health. So we're going to move on. The logics. Number 1, knowledge is a whole group or subdivision of a group of data or speculations or conclusions on data or methods of gaining data. What's that mean?
Yeah, so knowledge itself is the whole thing or the subdivision of data, or the ability to gain that data, the speculation or conclusion on data or methods of gaining data. So knowledge itself, you're coming to conclusions or gaining data. You're gaining experience. You're perceiving things and pulling all that data in with all the, was it 57 perceptics? We have 57?
54, 57, something like that. Yeah. So, you and your sensor array are bringing all of this in, and you're tabulating this data and putting it into the database so that you can have comparisons with it.
And not if all equal itself.
Right. Exactly. Logic 2, a body of knowledge is a body of data, aligned or unaligned, or methods of gaining data. That goes for everything. Everything is either a disorder of data or an order of data. And it is what the thetan does is they align that data in order to pose solutions to problems in the physical universe, like we were talking about earlier with the earlier axioms.
Mm-hmm.
Logic 3. Go ahead.
Any knowledge which can be sensed, measured, or experienced by any entity is capable of influencing that entity. So anything which can be perceived, sensed, measured, or experienced is capable of influencing that which is doing the sensing. So there's data there, and it is absolutely possible for that data that entity is influenced by that data that it's experiencing.
That's right. So if you can't perceive it, you can't do much with it. And that brings us to what a body can perceive on the electromagnetic spectrum is an incredibly narrow window, which we've also talked about on earlier podcasts. And that's why we have infrared, infragreen. That's why we use, sonar and MRI and all this stuff in order to see things through other methods that the body can't see, or we would not be able to do the things that we do. It says corollary, that knowledge which cannot be sensed, measured, or experienced by any entity or type of entity cannot influence that entity or type of entity. What's that mean?
Don't know what you don't know if you don't know what you don't know.
That's right. And that's why Scientology is knowing how to know, right? Very good. Logic 4, a datum is a facsimile of states of being, states of not being, actions or inactions, conclusions or suppositions in the physical or any other universe. What does that mean?
So any bit of data, a datum is a facsimile of something, a picture of something that is a state of being or something that's not being, something that you do or don't do, a conclusion or anything in this universe or another universe. So a bit of data is something about a state of being, an action, a conclusion, or supposition in the meshed universe or another universe.
Right. So it's you taking a picture of something. It's sort of like, what we do with our smartphones. We see something interesting, we take a picture of it. That's what you're doing. And then you're putting conclusions on top of it or suppositions on top of it when you go back and you look at it later and you go, wow, that's really cool. Or whatever. So it's just an image that you're superimposing significances on. Basically. Logic 5, a definition of terms is necessary to the alignment, statement, and resolution of suppositions, observations, problems, and solutions, and their communication. So we need to define the different ways of defining something. This is what we're doing. These are the building blocks of life. Right. This still blows my mind. All right. So here are the definitions for how to define something. First definition is a descriptive definition, one which classifies by characteristics by describing existing states of being. So you're describing it. Second, differentiative definition, one which compares unlikenesses to existing states of being or not being. That's like which of these things don't go together, from Electric Company or something like that back in the day when I was a kid. You're saying, how are these things different? Are they all the same? Where's Waldo? Well, because that's what Where's Waldo is it's, you're looking for the guy in the white and red striped shirt and the hat. The toque.
My new wife, but not my ex-wife. Yeah.
Right. Associative definition, one which declares likeness to existing states of being. In other words, so not which of these things don't go together, but what ones are like other ones. And Okay, like electrons attract like electrons, as an example. Finally, another way, and the last definition of defining something is action definition, one which delineates cause and potential change of state of being by cause of existence, inexistence, action, inaction, purpose, or lack of purpose. That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
One which delineates cause and a potential change of state of being by cause, existence, inexistence, action, inaction, purpose, or lack of purpose. So there's some sort of action that's different by something else. Okay. Maybe they're the exact same thing, but one's performing differently than the other.
Right.
But logic 6, absolutes are unobtainable. This is super important.
Yeah. One of my favorites.
One of the things that I like about this one is if you go online, you can look up and see is outer space a complete vacuum? It is not. Because when the guys go out in space and they come in and they take their spacesuits off in the International Space Station, and they're in the airlock there and everything, with an atmosphere, the suits have a smell to them that space has, and it's like stinky socks.
Really?
Yeah. So if it was an absolute vacuum, you're not going to have some sort of stinky sock smell.
Well, I totally got a whiff of not the stinky socks itself, but I totally got that space smell when you said that.
Yeah, I did too. When I read the article, I was like, I know exactly what that smells like.
Yeah, when Ron, I forgot which lecture it's in. I want to say it might be in the Milestone 1 talks where he says something about in smelly spacemen or something like that, or something as smelly spacers or something like that. And I'm like, there is something about that space people stink. And it's not just because, we're all in an enclosed space, but there's just that smell of space that gets on things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, that's the stink of the stars.
Right. Yeah.
Star stink.
Right.
So here's the next one. Gradient scales are necessary to the evaluation of problems in their data. Now, this is where you get on student hat in your basic study course, that everything has to be done on a gradient. And the reason for that is because everything works on a gradient. That's all there is to it. They're necessary. He says here, this is the tool of infinity valued logic. Absolutes are unobtainable. Terms such as good and bad, alive and dead, right and wrong are used only in conjunction with gradient scales. On the scale of right and wrong, everything above zero or center would be more and more right, approaching an infinite rightness, and everything below center would be more and more wrong, approaching infinite wrongness. All things assisting the survival of the survivor are considered to be right for the survivor. All things inhibiting survival from the viewpoint of the survivor can be considered wrong for the survivor. The more a thing assists survival, the more it can be considered right for the survivor. The more a thing or action inhibits survival, the more it is wrong from the viewpoint of the intended survivor. Well, that's a lot.
Yeah. Very powerful.
Yeah. So you have to do, you just absolutely everything that you do, you have to do on a gradient in this universe, in the physical universe, because that is how this universe works. You can't just turn on a dime and expect not to get hurt. Right. You have to do things on a gradient. You have to study on a gradient, so on and so forth. So gradients are fundamental in order to get anything done. Now, corollary here says any datum has only relative truth. Smack.
Yep.
Any datum has only relative truth because compared to what? Mm-hmm. Related to what? Everything is relative. Mm-hmm. Truth is relative. This is the next corollary. Truth is relative to environments, experience, and truth. So what's true for one guy may not be true for the other because he hasn't seen this. He hasn't experienced it before. Somebody says, yeah, there are little green men. He goes, well, I don't believe that there's little green men. I've never seen them. Then he sees a little green man and he goes, oh, they do exist.
Yeah. Right.
Logic 8. A datum can be evaluated only by a datum of comparable magnitude. Super, 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 super important. A datum can be evaluated only by a datum of comparable magnitude. You can't compare Sirius B as a star to our star, Sol. Why? Because they are completely different orders of magnitude.
Right.
I mean, the size of things in this physical universe is mind-blowing. How big things can get, and they can accrete or condense into big things. So a datum can be evaluated only by a datum of comparable magnitude. So you want to compare our star to another star that has similar size, a similar luminance, similar density. You wouldn't want to compare it to another star because they are completely different things. That's what this is about. You want to do 9?
Yep. Logic 9, a datum is as valuable as it has been evaluated. So something is worth as much as it has been evaluated by someone who's looking at this, by the scientist observing. That thing is as valuable as it has been looked at, thoroughly examined.
Right. And yet, otherwise, it's just a datum. Compared to what? And go from there. Okay, 10, go ahead.
The value of a datum is established by the amount of alignment relationship it imparts to other data. So again, like this one, it's has, how much does it bring to the other bits of data around it?
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Right. Like if we had a technology that didn't relate to, to anything that we had in this universe, it wouldn't be a usable technology. But this technology that we have here that Hubbard created is very, very, very valuable to the other bits of data around us as beings. It's incredibly valuable.
That's right. Logic 11.
Right. The value of a datum or field of data can be established by its degree of assistance in survival or in its inhibition to survival. So again, like I was just talking about with Hubbard's tech, this data that it assists survival, absolutely assists survival. And we know this stuff really well. It is in assistance to survival on all dynamics.
Right. So how much does that datum help is to the degree that it is valuable.
Right. Yep. And we can all think of things that are greater in that scale and lesser in that scale.
That's right. Logic 12, continued.
The value of a datum or field of data is modified by the viewpoint of the observer. So the observer effect, filtered by a lens of the observer who's looking at it. So again, an aberration can put overlays of stuff onto what one is observing.
That's right. Logic 13, problems are resolved by compartmenting them into areas of similar magnitude and data comparing them to data already known or partially known and resolving each area. Data which cannot be known immediately may be resolved by addressing what is known and using its solution to resolve the remainder. So you work with what you've got and you put them in little places. You go, all these are similar, all these are similar, all these are similar. And then you go, okay, so they're not all similar, but these are similar to these are similar to these, and these are similar to these. And then you go, okay, so what's left? That's logic 13.
Yep.
Now what do we know? That's deductive logic. Logic 14. Factors introduced into a problem or solution which do not derive from natural law, but only authoritarian command aberrate that problem or solution. There's a doozy. What does that mean?
Something that doesn't have a correspondence within natural law, but is only put in because somebody says it's that way. If somebody says it's that way because they're being authoritarian about it, that is aberration right there. But if you go out and you observe it, if it's observable within the universe, within MEST universe and within theta universe, then it's got its corollary with a natural law. But if something is just said because, damn it, I said so, that's aberrative.
That's right. Right. Or do it because I said so.
Right.
That's absolutely right. Logic 15, the introduction of an arbitrary into a problem or solution invites further introduction of arbitraries into problems and solutions. Well, we've seen that. You see that every day. Somebody says, well, you need to do this, and then you go do that and you're like, that didn't help.
Right.
Well, then I just wasted another hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
and then there was the internet.
Yeah. The whole concept where they're trying to get us into multitasking years ago of doing one thing while you're doing another thing.
Yeah. Now, logic 16, an abstract postulate must be compared to the universe to which it applies, and brought into the category of things which can be sensed, measured, or experienced in that universe before such postulate can be considered workable. What does that mean?
Let's see. I'm reading this again.
I know what it means to me.
I'm reading this again. So logic 16, an abstract postulate must be compared to the universe to which it applies. Okay. and brought into the category of things which can be sensed, measured, or experienced in that universe before such postulate can be considered workable. Yeah, so like right there, I had to bring it into my own universe to compare it to the things that I've experienced so that postulate can be considered workable. So you've got to look at it from your own point of view and compare it to the comparable magnitude in your universe for it to be workable for you.
That's right. Yeah, because if it can't, there's nothing you can do with it. It's just a subjective fantasy.
Right. What's true for you is what's true for you, kind of thing.
That's right. That's right. Logic 17, those fields which most depend upon authoritative opinion for their data least contain known natural law.
See a lot of that.
Yeah, well, that's everything that the U.S. Congress ever created. Those fields which most depend upon authoritative opinion for their data least contain known natural law. That's why governments are a hassle and they get in the way, because it's nothing but arbitraries. It's not natural law.
Right.
That's my opinion on it.
Yeah.
18, a postulate is as valuable as it is workable. So if you say you're a one-legged dancer and you say, I'm going to become a star and I'm going to be the best dancer ever, is that a postulate that's valuable and workable when you only have one leg?
Really?
Am I just being a cynic?
Yeah. No, that's not workable. No.
No.
The valuable as it is workable. You gotta
Right.
do that thing. You gotta do the work too.
Mm-hmm. That's right. 19, you want to do that one?
The workability of a postulate is established by the degree to which it explains existing phenomena already known, by the degree that it predicts new phenomena which when looked for will be found to exist, and by the degree that it does not require that phenomena which do not exist, in fact, be called into existence for its explanation. Let me read that one again. The workability of a postulate is established by the degree to which it explains existing phenomena already known, by the degree that it predicts new phenomena which, when looked for, will be found to exist, and by the degree that it does not require that phenomena which do not exist, in fact, to be called into existence for its explanation. That's a mouthful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the workability of a postulate. So this means, to me, a postulate. What does this one mean to you?
Well, I mean, if you look at a postulate is as valuable as it is workable, this breaks down what is workability. It explains existing phenomena that are already known, predicts new phenomena when looked for will be found to exist, and by the degree that it does not require that phenomena which do not exist, in fact, be called into existence for its explanation. So you've got to postulate with reality. Now, that's not saying that you can't. I mean, especially when you get on the OT levels, you can make postulates and you just say, this is what I want to have happen. And you don't have to get down into the minutia of it and the action of it. It's like Qui-Gon Jinn said to Obi-Wan Kenobi in episode 1. He said, I'm sure a solution will present itself. That's it. That's the perfect postulate right there, because you're working off of the fact that a solution will present itself. It handles these points in Logic 19. Just go, a solution will present itself. And a solution presents itself. I've seen it time and time and time and time again in my own life. There's no explanation for it. It's just you put the postulate out there and you go, yeah, this will get solved. You don't know how, and you don't have to drop down into the physical universe and its mechanics to get it figured out. You just put that tone 40 there and say it'll solve itself.
Right.
And it does. So that's workability. To the degree that it doesn't work and the postulate doesn't stick and things are worse, well, maybe there's something that you might want to look at.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That's my take on it. Logic 20, a science may be considered to be a large body of aligned data which has similarity in application and which has been deduced or induced from basic postulates. So in other words, it's a body of data that they've observed certain things. And these things all go together and they all make up a matrix of what this particular thing is about. So we have biology, we have endocrinology, we have sociology. These are all sciences that have particular phenomena in them that are similar, and that's why they're grouped together. And then you have paraologies that is unexplained, but they still have phenomena that fall under a certain banner. That's what sciences are. So we're running out of time here for this podcast. We're going to stop at Logic 20. This is page 5 of 23 of the PDF, Axioms of Dianetics, that you can find in the description of this podcast, Season 5, Episode 16. The title of this will be Discussion on Dianetic Axioms, Part 1. And we will do Part 2 on Friday and take up from Logic 21 and move forward. So I hope you guys have had fun listening to this and hearing us discourse on this and everything. And let us know what you think of the podcast on Facebook. We'd love to hear your input on it. And if we're getting into it too much or we're getting into it too little, let us know. And we'll be happy to adjust one way or the other. And we hope these are making more sense to you with us discoursing about them. So for myself and Jason.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate y'all listening and tuning in and getting to see us go through and chop this up in real time and discuss it. It's been a lot of fun, and thank you all for listening.
Thanks, folks. We'll talk to you soon. Love you, and namaste.